Alright guys, we're live and we're learning the Chatzar Yosef a few days before Pesach. We are in chapter 14, section 1. Let's do the Gemara and then jump in back where we left off. The Gemara says, it's the Gemara from Masechet Gittin 57a. It's here in English on page 205. It says the following: Rav Manyumi bar Chilkiah, Rav Chilkiah bar Tuvia, and Rav Huna bar Chia, three Chachamim. They were once sitting together, and they said, if there's someone who has heard something about Kfar Sechani of Egypt, a city in Egypt where Jews lived, let him relate it. Please, they want to know about this city. One of them opened up and said the following. This section 1 focuses on just this one story that this first one said. There was an incident involving an engaged man and woman. A couple who were engaged means they already did the first step of halachic marriage. They didn't do the second step yet. From that city, in Kfar Sechania, and they were taken captive by Goyim, by Gentiles. And then later married them to each other. The captors took them, they said, okay, go in the room, make babies. So we have more babies, we have more Jews, make more money, for more ransom. Right? The woman said to the man, please do not touch me, as I do not have a ketubah from you. They never got around to writing the ketubah. Again, in the previous lectures, this is already part 3 of this series, but in the previous lectures we spoke about the importance, the details of all the different steps of halachic marriage, kedushin, nisu'in, ketubah, etc., etc. Bottom line is, a man is not allowed to live with a woman. Halakha is not allowed to live with a woman unless he has a valid ketubah, a valid marriage document detailing his obligations to her. He's not allowed to be with her. That is only the Rabbanan, however. That decree is only the Rabbanan. Technically, on a deraita level, he can't be with her if he did all the steps of marriage. The ketubah has to be written at some point. There's a machloket whether or not ketubah is deraita Rabbanan, but I don't want to digress. And he did not touch her until the day of his death. He listened to her. They're slaves, not slaves. What do you call them? They're captives, hostages, and he didn't touch her. And when he died, she said to them, eulogize this man because he pitpit. Pitpit means chattered or spoke or conversed, as we'll see, with his yetzer, his evil inclination. More than Yosef. Which Yosef we're talking about?
Yosef, our forefather. Or Yosef.
Yosef HaTzadik. Yeah. There's a lot of Yosefs in Jewish history. We're talking about the original Yosef, son of Yaakov. Since in the case of Yosef, it was only one time, whereas this man struggled with his passion each and every day. Additionally, in the case of Yosef, he was not in the bed, in one and the same bed with Potiphar's wife, which is the woman who was trying to seduce him. Whereas this man was in the same bed with me. Also, in the case of Yosef, Potiphar's wife was not his wife. That was his master's wife. Whereas with this man, it was I, his wife. Technically. And still he controlled himself.
Why couldn't he just write a ketubah and give it to her?
So that's a good question. The commentators did bring it down. Maharsha, Benayahu. They gave several scenarios in which they were not able to write a ketubah. Some of the answers were that they didn't have a scribe. It had to be written down. They didn't have a proper scribe with them. No, not everyone knew how to write in those times. They didn't have paper pen to write. But even so, we saw in the commentaries that there's a way to do a ketubah without a document. You can do it verbally. You can say, my property that I have in so place is encumbered. There's going to be a lien on that property to pay you your ketubah in the event that the husband dies or that I divorce you. Right? He could have done that, but nevertheless, that didn't happen. So we have to accept that there was a situation that was preventing them from being able to do a valid ketubah. Maybe they weren't so well versed in the laws of ketubah to do it. You think of the situation. At the end of the day, the details are not given, but we have to accept that it was not possible to write a ketubah. So we had a bunch of questions on this Gemara. As we did in the first video of this series, check over there all the deep questions. The main question we're trying to answer here is how could This woman claimed that the test that her fiance had was harder than the test of Yosef Tzaddik. How dare she make such a claim? Because and she tried to give 3 reasons for it, right? Like we said, Yosef wasn't every day. We challenged that because we found in Gemara Masechet Yomah that says that Potiphar's wife used to change her clothing morning and night to try to seduce him every day. There's a verse that says there's a verse in the Torah straight that says day by day she was doing it. It says yom yom, day by day. I don't know how you translate that verse.
Over what period of time?
While he was a slave in the house of Potiphar. That was about a year, I believe, more or less. About a year, yes, I believe so.
A serious test.
Do we know how long they were captives for?
No. The next thing she claimed was that Potiphar's wife was not in the same bed with him, but then we brought a Gemara Masechet Sotah. It's hard to understand, but it says over there that Yosef almost did it with her. Everyone left the house. It was a special holiday. Everyone left the house. It was just her and Yosef in the house. And he got to such a high point of arousal where he had to hold himself back last minute, and the semen came out of his fingernails. 10 drops, 1 for each fingernail. Whatever that means, deep Kabbalistic digression. But the point is that if he's on that such high level of arousal, my claim was, isn't that equal to, or at least the same as being in the same bed with her? Danny disagreed with that famously. He thought being in the same bed with the girl is a much higher level of arousal, which I agree to disagree. You can make that argument. And then the last thing we said,
She wasn't his wife.
she said that Potiphar's wife wasn't his wife, but this girl was his wife. And that, what did we say about that? We said that if anything, one of the defenses we tried to give to explain on a simple level how it could be that his test was harder was that the only thing stopping this hostage boy from having relations with her was a rabbinic enactment that you're not allowed to be with a girl unless you're ready ketubah, because technically he did the other steps of marriage already, right? So, which is quote unquote a less stringent thing, and nevertheless he kept it. Versus with Yosef, if he had relations with Potiphar's wife, that would be adultery. Even though she was a goya, adultery applies to at that time they were all bnei Noach, they were all sons of Noach, right? And bnei Noach had 7 laws. One of the laws was do not commit adultery.
Wouldn't they both have to be married for adultery? Or
no, absolutely not.
Just one of them?
Yes, just a woman. If the woman is a married woman, any man who's besides her husband has relations with her, that's adultery.
Yeah.
That is the definition of adultery. Okay? So that would have been a much worse sin. And Yosef didn't do that, so you could argue that if there's a much more severe sin, a person stands back more readily. Versus the Rabbanan sin, he can be more lenient with it sometimes. Doesn't take it so seriously. And nevertheless, this guy who died in our story still held it. So that's one simple way we try to defend it. But we're about to dive into a very deep discussion here. Page 210. We're in the middle of the Chatzar Yosef. It says over here the following. The simple approach that we just spoke about is well and good. But when considering the event of Yosef and Potiphar's wife, we have to understand exactly what happened there in Parashat Vayeshev. On a deeper scale, it becomes apparent that there is something outstanding here which cannot be overlooked, this being the sheer magnitude of that event. The Ben Yehoyada briefly glossed over it at the end of his words, but in order to attain a more lucid glimpse of this event and its cosmic nature, we shall paraphrase what the Shnei Luchot HaBrit writes about it. Shnei Luchot HaBrit is a very famous encyclopedic Kabbalistic work written by Rabbi Yeshaya Horowitz. And he brings a lot of deep ideas there in that famous book of his. And we brought it down over here. In English, we gave you like a little paraphrase summary. This is what he says. There is a straight correlating line from the following 3 people, biblical people: Adam, Harishon, Adam, Yaakov Avinu, and then Yosef, Yaakov's son. There's a straight correlation between them. The beauty of Adam was the beauty of Yaakov. That's the language of the Zohar. And Yosef was a spitting image of Yaakov. They all looked alike. Right? There he brings down also that Yaakov Avinu was the Gilgul, was the reincarnation of Adam Rishon. That's one part of him. Yes, physically, their faces, their appearance. Why? Because the way the soul looks is very similar to the way the body looks. That particular body. The soul has features from all the bodies that it's ever lived in or been, partners with. So here, since you have a similar source, spiritual spark of soul between the three of them, they looked alike, but that also means they had similar missions, as we'll see. Adam was created as a fusion of two opposites, the body and the soul. First human being, right? Which are at constant war with each other, the body and the soul. As one rises, the other falls. It's like a seesaw. They're each battling to see whom you're going to give more attention to, whom you're going to give precedence to in your life. Okay? Before the sin, Adam was clothed with the term that's called kutnot or, tunics of light, which means that the body was practically translucent, illuminating brightly just as the soul, because spirituality was totally primary. Spirituality was the default. That was the main status, the main state. The body was just secondary. After the sin, however, he ate from the tree, broke God's will, broke God's word. After the sin, his status was demoted to that of kotnot or with an ayin. Same term, one letter difference. Kotnot or with an aleph is light, tunics of light, and kotnot or with an ayin is a much more deeper, guttural, physically based sound, which means hide or skin. Tunics of skin. Okay, I just explained that in note 8. I explained the difference in the aleph and the ayin. Okay, giving the body, once it got the skin, it gave the body the edge, the upper hand, making it thick and dense, practically drowning out the soul from sensibility. Now you look at a person after the sin, mostly what you see is skin. To find the spirit and the soul, you got to really look deep, and sometimes you can see the light of a really refined, righteous person.
So Adam was like a light bulb originally.
Sure, yeah, think of it that way, like a light bulb almost, sure. Right?
Of sorts, yeah.
A walking, living, breathing light bulb with a piece of God in him shining through, so obviously. Before the sin, when looking at Adam, one would see an awesome glow and make out a faint outline of a body, like a light bulb, you said. After the sin, all one sees is the body and can only sometimes make out a glow in the face of a very refined person. Rabbi Kivitatz brings that down in the name of Rav Simcha Rassam in one of his famous rebbeim. This foundational change made it so that the seed would come out of man would be called, the seed that would come out of man would be called tipas serucha, which means a putrid drop. Putrid, like disgusting drop. Instead of what it could have been, which is zera kodesh, holy seed. The original intent was that when Adam had children, it should always be zera kodesh, holy seed. But once he made the sin, that transferred over to tipas serucha, putrid drop. It says famously in Pirkei Avot, whenever you're about to sin, remember three things. One of them is where you came from, where you're going, and the third one is in front of whom you're going to have to give din v'cheshbon, an accounting of all your deeds. So then it goes out, the Mishnah over there, Pirkei Avot 3:1, it explains what each one of those are, where you come from, where did you come from? It says the answer, tipas serucha, a putrid drop. Right? That became the existence of the state of the world after Adam sinned. So sexuality went from being something holy, a fulfillment of the mitzvah of being fruitful, the first mitzvah in the Torah, and it changed to something dastardly and scandalous. Now everyone's like, it became something. What's another word for scandalous? Simpler word, I don't know. You get what I'm saying. One of the core purposes of humankind's generations is to repair the damage done by Adam, right? Every generation that comes by is supposed to our goal, part of it, is to fix the original sin of Adam. When Yaakov came around, he tasked himself with fixing this particular blemish. Yaakov Avinu. He wanted to elevate the putrid drop back up to being called holy seed. And in doing that, he would bring humankind one step closer to kotnot or with the aleph, tunics of light from tunics of skin, working backwards, getting back to the original state of spirituality. Yaakov did this how? By focusing on this particular area in his life, seeding offspring of the utmost holiness and purity. Yaakov never had a wasteful seed drop out of him. That's the famous thing about one of the famous things about Yaakov Avinu. The Midrashim bring it down. There's no really disagreement as far as I know on this fact.
What does that mean exactly?
Here you go. I tell you, the first time that he ever emitted seed from his body was at the age of 84 on his wedding night, which produced his first son, Reuven. Before that, he never had a drop of seed.
What about Abraham and Yitzhak?
It doesn't say it directly, but I guess go extrapolate. It seems to be implying that no one else did it like him, like Yaakov Avinu. Which, being a man, man's, we were talking about the other day, man's mode is just to procreate, to spread seed. And unfortunately, a lot of those seeds throughout life, whether intentionally or unintentionally, those seeds come out in an impure, improper way. Right? We all know what I'm talking about. I don't need to go into details. So, with Yaakov Avinu, however, that never happened. He kept his seed, Bet Yosef Glad Kosher, like we would say today, okay? Zera Kodesh, holy seed, yes.
You think it's possible that Adam, like that, the eating from the tree is a metaphor for like a sexual act that he did with Chava?
Well, I don't know. The Midrash says down that he did have relations with Chava, but he did it too early. He said he was with her in broad daylight on Friday afternoon when they were created. He was supposed to wait till Shabbat to come in. Friday night, which is the best time to be with your wife. That's when he was supposed to do it, but he didn't wait. He did it in broad daylight, and the Nachash saw that, and that caused him to start having a desire for her, and that's what made him fabricate his plan to take her away from him by killing him. He wanted her to feed him the fruit, so that he could have her to himself. The Nachash, and according to other sources, he even raped her or something like that. There's a lot of different sources about what he did with her, the Nachash. But at the end of the day, it ended up being fruit. I mean, the whole Bereshit is such an amazing text because it's designed for a 6-year-old who's learning Torah for the first time to read it and enjoy it and understand it on his level. At the same time, it's designed for the 60-year-old Kabbalistic master to understand what's going on, which is in a completely different world.
It forever eludes you.
Exactly, but the beautiful part is that all levels of that beautiful diamond are true on a certain level, right? They all correlate on one ladder from physical to spiritual.
Honestly incredible.
It's an amazing thing. That's why it's the most famous text that was ever produced by anybody, right? It's the most printed text of all history.
I feel like it's the most controversial too.
Of course,
the most discussed and the most disagreed upon and agreed upon.
Well, that's why we have the oral Torah that comes along with it. That's the key to unlock the meaning.
But even with that, we don't know anything.
Listen, we know a lot more than the average Joe Schmo.
Right, but still.
But that's our guide. That's our. We need a guide. That's the guide that God gave Moshe. This is the oral Torah. This is how you interpret this text. Otherwise, you're going to have everyone interpret their own way. You have 1,000 different religions. This is what it means. This is the code to understanding it. Keep it oral within your group. And it was for many thousands of years until it had to be written down. Right? That's the story of the Torah. But anyway, I digress. What am I saying over here?
Saying how Yaakov.
Yeah, so I wanted to say to you, by the way, that there's actually many other sins that Adam did that was not clearly written in the Torah. Some are, but the Midrash brings down one of them, a lot of the other ones. One of them is what I told you, that he had relations with Chava too early. The other one is that after the sin, he was so upset with her that he separated himself with her for 130 years, and during that entire time, he would waste seed.
Oh.
Yeah, there's a Midrash about that as well. And all those souls that he created were contributed to the negative,
Isn't that upsetting,
demonic,
though? Isn't that so
powers of the
upsetting?
world.
That just shows you the human nature. Like the first person couldn't even deal with his own like stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
It
Listen,
kind of sets us up for failure.
humans are.
Tragic.
Again, we're digressing here again, but failure is an essential part of success. You ever heard that quote?
Yeah.
You cannot succeed unless you first fail. And the more times you fail, the more grand your eventual success will be.
If it ever happens, even.
Yes,
Thank you, Tom.
but yes, it's you never lose until you give up. That's the point. Once you give up, the whole thing was just one big tragedy. But if you say, I'm not giving up until I'm getting this right, no matter how many times it takes me to fail, the more grand the final
Yep, for sure.
success, revelation will be. Which, again, plays into the history as well. That's what history is. Look at how many times the Jewish people have just faced tragedy. And it's just that all that is doing, a part of what that's doing, is building up the amazing climax of what the end of days will be.
Our success, right?
Okay. Let's go further over here. Yaakov's main offspring was Yosef Tzaddik, his 11th son. Yosef was Yaakov's direct line, like we're talking about here. Adam, Yaakov, then Yosef. And his most direct propagation into the next generation, which is why the Torah writes so peculiar, I can't say the word. Peculiarly. Did I say it right?
Yeah.
Weirdly. There's a pasuk that says, "Ve'ele toledot Yaakov Yosef." Translation: These are the offspring of Yaakov. Yosef was 17 years old, etc., etc., etc. Goes straight into the story of Yosef and his brothers, how they didn't like each other, and Yosef was sold. Anytime the Torah opens up with the sentence "Ve'ele toledot X," these are the offspring of so and so person. Does it with Yaakov Avinu, does it with Noach, does it with Abraham, it does it with Adam. Not Adam.
It's underlining the
I mean
importance.
the generations after Adam.
The first one I mentioned.
Every time it says that, the Torah gives you a long, drawn-out genealogy. This guy had this guy, and he had this son, and he had that sons. But when it comes to Yaakov Avinu, it doesn't say that. It says, Eli Terodot Yaakov, Yosef was 17 years old, and the story. Hold on. You only mentioned Yosef. Where's the other brothers? Where's their children?
He's the most important then.
Because, and there's a lot of commentary on that, because Yosef not only was the most important, Yosef was the pure direct likeness of Yaakov into the next generation. If you could copy paste a person from one generation to the next, that was Yaakov to Yosef. And they had so many similarities in their lives. Did I bring it down here? Yes, I did. Look at note 13. Baruch Hashem. We'll get there in a second. It goes straight into Yosef without listing the rest of Yaakov's offspring, but rather going straight into the story of Yosef. The point is that Yosef continued to carry the main torch that Yaakov lit. It is no coincidence that he was a spitting image of him. It was merely a pass of the baton. Look at note 13. The lives of Yosef and Yaakov mirrored each other strongly. See Rashi over there in that verse 37:2 in Bereshit. Did I bring some of them here? Yes, I did. Yosef was fitting to have 12 sons just as Yaakov. He was supposed to have 12 sons just like Yaakov, but he lost 10 of them because of the 10 drops of seed that came out of his fingernails that I mentioned before from Masechet Sotah in his strife with Potiphar's wife, as we mentioned. Other similarities they had.
Can you elaborate how their lives were similar?
Yes, I'm trying to. Yaakov, his biggest enemy was his brother. Yosef, his enemies were his brothers.
But not really, they're his enemies.
In the beginning, yeah, they hated him. It says they hated him. That's the word. This is they hated him. It says. Anyway, they both were supposed to have. It doesn't say anywhere that Ishmael hated him. Those words aren't there. It doesn't. The Midrash brings down that he was rough with him. Anyway, Yosef was supposed to have 12 sons. We only ended up having 2. Yaakov actually had 12 sons. The other similarities escape me now, but look at Rashi over there. It brings you a few, and there's even more. It'll come to me. I'll tell you when it comes to me. There's many of them. Anyway, let's go further over here. Yaakov is the attribute of Tiferet. Now we're going into a little bit deeper here, okay? So we always like to reference how this is all connected to the template of the universe, and that template is what we call the 10 Sefirot. that the deeper wisdom brings down, the 10 lights that emanate from God's ultimate infinite oneness and break down into 10 lights. Each one has a special power, a special attribute, or special management in which God runs the world with. And then those come down, break down further and further and reflect into the physical world that we live in. Right? We have a diagram on page 527 of all of them. If you look over there, each one of these Sefirot had a person or people in the Tanakh, usually somewhere in the Bible, that represented them in the physical world to the utmost amount. And Yaakov was Tiferet. That's the middle one, straight in the middle, the chest. Yaakov was that, Tiferet. Okay, Abraham was Chesed. That's the right side, and Yitzchak was Gevurah, the left side. Yaakov was the center balance between them. All right. Which propagates directly down into the attribute of Yesod, of which Yosef is the exemplar. Yosef is Yesod, which is right below Tiferet, direct straight line.
So is Adam, where's Adam?
Adam, he had a essence of Keter in him.
So
That's the top one. That's the straight line that we're talking about. Exactly, and I'm trying to figure out. Why Keter? Because Keter is the first one, is the first light that's separated out. It means crown. It's the least understood one. It's the most blurry one, because it's the closer you are to God's infinite oneness, the less understandable it is. And Adam, his nickname is Adam Arishon, the first person, Adam, the first. So therefore, since he started the human race, he has a certain attribute of Keter in there. So it is a straight line down. And then the last one, Malchut, which I didn't bring down here, but the next one in line here would be David the Melech. David is Malchut. But I didn't really talk about that here in this one too much. We had enough to talk about anyway.
Is David like in that same lineage of Yaakov and Yosef?
He's from Yehuda, not from Yosef. He's from Yehuda.
So like his midot or how?
Yeah, he had a similar mission. He was a reincarnation of Adam, also part of Adam. In fact, he wouldn't be alive if it wasn't for Adam. The famous Midrash says, "Why did Adam live 930 years?"
Yeah, 70 years again.
He donated 70 years to David Melech. He saw that David Melech is not going to live long enough. He gave him his whole. And David lived 70 years. So it's one direct line here of those four people. But we're focusing on the top three right now. Anyway, Yaakov and Yosef. Look what it says over here. Thus, when Yosef was tested in this exact area by Potiphar's wife and resisted, the event was absolutely cosmic in nature. It solidified, at least within the family of Yaakov, the eventual Jewish people, the upgrade in the status of their offspring from putrid drop, tipas rucha, up to holy seed, zera kodesh. Yosef continued that mission, right? Yaakov, his father, never wasted a drop. His father had all 12 sons who were all tzaddikim. That was new, that was different. Up until Yaakov, the forefathers had sons who were not perfect. Abraham had Ishmael, Yitzchak had Esav. Yaakov had 12 perfect sons. Perfect,
How could it say that?
Loosely saying perfect.
Yeah.
Very high level of holiness, put it that way.
None of them were Russian.
Right, but they sold their brother.
One act.
Literally.
No.
Listen, people make mistakes, but they made the Shuvah at the end, didn't they? They made the Shuvah at the end.
They lied to their father continuously for years.
They made the Shuvah at the end, didn't they?
I don't know, man. That's a tough one.
Okay, and put it this way. They lied to their father. You know who else made it a necessity that Yaakov couldn't know about where Yosef was? Hashem himself. There was a pact. There was 9 of them, 9 brothers, and then Hashem was the 10th one. They made a pact that you cannot tell Yaakov where Yosef was. And even Yitzchak, who was still alive when Yosef was sold. No one knows this. Yitzchak Avinu was still alive when Yosef was sold. The genealogy is there. He knew where Yosef was. And because of the pact, he was not allowed to tell Yaakov either where Yosef was. This is all a test for Yaakov. Now it came back to me. It came back to me. It is. It came back to me now. Yaakov was away from his father Yitzchak for 14 plus 22 is about 36 years. But the 14 years is allowed. We close your eyes on that because he was in yeshiva the whole time. So therefore, we don't penalize him for not doing the mitzvah of honoring your father in those years. But the 22 years after that, when he wanted to get married and had children and Mudavan and all that, 22 years away from his father. For that, Yaakov also was penalized. How long was Yosef away from Yaakov? 22 years. Another similarity. Keep going. There's a lot of them. Yaakov and Yosef. Okay, let's go further over here. So Yosef continued this mission of elevating the seed, and therefore he absolutely had to resist Potiphar's wife. Because if he gave in to her, it's all done. Over. The elevated status of the Jewish people of being a holy seed, done.
Yosef came from a holy seed.
Yes.
He already.
He could still fail. The higher you build a building, the harder it can fall. The test continues till the last breath of a person's life. Anyway, going further. In fact, even though their bodies did not become actually luminescent like Adam before the sin, right? Remember, we're connected it back to that. This is all connected with the skin versus the light, and the holy seed versus the future drop. So even though by Yaakov and Yosef continuing this mission and therefore contributing to elevating back the holy seed, and by definition some semblance of tunics of light again, the bodies of Yaakov and Yosef nevertheless reached a certain elevated lambit, which means bright status, because of their accomplishments in this area. Look at note number 15. This is related to why Yaakov and Yosef were the only people in the Torah ever to be mummified. Their bodies were preserved, didn't rot.
Why didn't Yosef ever send a messenger to his father saying, "I'm here alive in Egypt"?
For the same reason.
Yosef
It's all, again, it's for the same reason. This question is brought down, but he wasn't supposed to. He was supposed to test the brothers out first to make sure that they made teshuvah, that they're going to stand up for the brother, and also the father Yaakov himself had to go through midah k'neged midah, punishment for not being around for his father for 22 years. Again, it's all planned. It was all a beautiful symphony of refinement of this family.
Do you think that he ever tried?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Has it ever crossed?
The Midrash family says that he didn't. He never tried to.
He could have easily assembled a caravan and sent.
Right, but he wasn't supposed to. That's the thing. He wasn't supposed to. There was a bigger mission at hand, that everyone was being refined and tested and fixing their sins. Anyway, with this, we may derive a novel understanding of the following verse, about the end of the incident with Yosef and Potiphar's wife. Let's look at this for a second. I don't think we're going to finish this piece today. It's a big piece. But I want to just read you this part. The pasuk says in Bereshit 39, 12, 13, the following. ותתפסהו בבגדו לאמור שכבה עמי ויעזוב בגדו בידיו ויאנוס ויצא החוצה. Translation, and she caught hold of him, Potiphar's wife, by his garment, saying, "Lie with me." And he left his garment in her hand and fled and exited to the outside. Next pasuk, "Vahi kir'otah ki azav bigdo biyadav yanos achutza," and it was kir'otah, which means as her seeing, literally, that's the translation, as her seeing. It was as her seeing of this whole thing. Ki, that he left his garment in her hand and he fled out to the outside. That's what the verse says.
She foresaw it this way. That's how she.
Not that she foresaw it. The simple meaning of the verse is that she saw that he left the garment in her hands and ran outside. So hold on, it seems very redundant and repetitive. The verse 12 already just said that he left it in her hands and ran outside. What's this extra word saying?
Realized that it was in her hand.
It's
Okay, but what is it coming to teach me? What's extra about this verse?
Isn't this as she wanted it to be? As her seeing, like this is how she envisioned it happening.
How she envisioned it? What did she envision?
She wanted to set him up, to catch him, you know?
No, she wanted to be with him. She wanted to set him up.
This is when he ran away.
When he ran away, she realized,
But the next thing she does, she starts crying out, saying he tried to
exactly. So
come on to me.
This is exactly how she planned it all. That one way or another, she would have won, you know? Either she would have been with him or she would have set him up.
So that's how you're interpreting kir'ota, as she sees?
It's almost
as her seeing?
as she planned it, you know? That's the way I'm seeing it.
Let's see. So look at this. This is Yosef's defining moment. What birthed his namesake? Yosef HaTzadik, Yosef the righteous. Because a person is not called righteous, tzaddik, unless he overcomes tests in this particular area of the Brit.
Oh, really?
Yes.
That's one of the...
That's what makes a person have the nickname of tzaddik. That's how he got it. After this very thing, after he overcame it. So as the Shnei Luchot HaBrit revealed to us this was a continuation of his father's mission to jump from the level of putrid drop up to holy seed. Yosef's leaving of his garment in her hands when he ran away. The verse says it twice. The Torah tells us twice that he left her garment in her hands to run away. What does the garment teach us? It's representative of his leaving the tunics of skin and returning back to the tunics of light, kotnot or with the aleph. He ran outside naked and he was not ashamed. Unlike Adam, when confronted by Hashem for eating from the fruit. Remember that? He was ashamed, he was hiding after eating from the fruit because he was naked. Here, Yosef left a garment in her hands and he ran outside. I'm not ashamed because now we're fixing it, now we're elevating. No reason to be ashamed. I'm going back to light clothing of light.
You don't think he could have foresaw that this would get him in trouble?
So look, we're going on a much deeper level over here. Through this event, Yosef accomplished a momentous step towards rectification of the shame of Adam. Adam's nakedness was shameful, but Yosef's nakedness was a trophy for the outstanding mitzvah he performed by guarding the sanctity of his seed. This is artfully hinted in these verses, as it seems to me, which at first glance seems to be redundant. Verse 13 simply repeats that she saw that Yosef left his garment in her hands, but this was already said in verse 12 right before. Why is the Torah saying it twice? The depth is that due to the wording of verse 13, it lends itself to be read in a completely different light than what the simple reading suggests, as follows. We're going to read it a different way, the following way. And it was kir'otah. It can mean as her seeing, but it can also mean as its appearance. It was like its appearance.
Oh, so it was
With it referring to what? Not her seeing, but it referring to Yosef's goof, his body. His body. Why does it say goof? Because goof is a female word. Every word in Hebrew, every noun is male or female. Goof is a female word. Kir'otah means, it can mean two things. And the girl seeing it, a girl seeing something, or it can mean and something female appearing this way.
What does that mean?
So something female, what's the female thing here? Body, the word goof.
Right?
What's the male name of the word body?
No, he's saying like
No. Every every noun is male or female. So shulchan, table, is shulchanot, is a female word. Okay? That's a male word. I'm looking around. Sefer. Sefer is a book. Sfarim. Sfarim is a male. So sefer is a male word. So the word goof, which means body, gufot is a female word. Right? So kir'otah could be referring to a body's appearance. Whose body? Yosef's body. Again, Yosef is a male person, but the word goof, right? If I'm referring to your body, and I'm talking about your body, I would use female conjugation in Hebrew. You understand? If I'm talking about you, I'm talking male conjugation. Daniel. If I say goof shel Daniel, Daniel's body, he arocha, he's tall. Something like that, no? I would use female conjugation. Same thing here. Kir'otah is a female conjugation on its appearance. Okay? Referring to Yosef's body, meaning his body reverted to the qualities of its original luminescent appearance, like Adam before the sin, tunics of light. How so? The verse goes on to explain ki. The next verse is ki, the next word, which means because. Because he left the garment in her hand, as the rest of the verse says. The word ki has many different meanings. It can mean, it's a connecting word. It can mean because, it can mean but, it can mean if. That, right? So instead of that, we're translating it as because. So his body was like its original appearance because he left the garment in her hands, because he overcame this test. Leaving behind this tunic of skin in her hands, returning back to tunics of light.
If he just ran away with his garment on, we wouldn't say all this?
I mean, this is a deep sort of reading of this verse. The simple meaning of the verse is always true. We're just revealing you another depth of what is actually happening in the grand scheme of things.
Isn't removing a garment like a much more intricate process? I don't understand like the actual physicality behind it.
What do you mean?
Like how did she accidentally have
He had a robe on or something like that. She grabbed the robe. She just shook out of it and ran away. What? What's so hard about it?
I don't know.
It's not like a tight thing that we have today. Everything was loose back then.
Right, but it just conveniently slipped right off of him.
No, I'm sure he shimmied out of it or something like that, I assume.
Wouldn't it be easier to just like pull it off and like run away with it? You know, like somebody's imagine you're wearing a talit.
She had a tight grip.
I don't know, man.
But that also supports further what we're saying here. There's a metaphoric representation of what's happening here
Of course, I get that.
by leaving that in her hands.
Right, so she had a tight grip. He tried to come out, it didn't work, so he just dropped it.
Yeah,
Just to get out.
it was worth it for him to be naked because that nakedness was a trophy,
He went
not
straight.
like Adam's. So now after we understand what just happened with the whole story of Yosef and Potiphar's wife, we have to ask the question again, back to our Gemara. We see that Yosef's battle was one of epic proportions, contributing to the mission of rectifying mankind at large with massive repercussions on what would eventually become the Jewish people. Considering all of this, the nagging question resurfaces: how could the captive woman in our Gemara make such an egregious claim that her betrothed's battle, the boy she was with, his battle, was deserving of higher praise than Yosef? Now do you see the question? And of course, there's an answer here that I'd like to offer, but it's going to take me at least another hour to go through it. So I think we're just going to leave it off right here and B'ezrat Hashem answer that question, I guess, after Pesach. Chag Sameach. Baruch Adonai Olam. Amen ve'amen.